You know this thing.
Not that fast.
I mean, this thing. Swirly Bokeh. This is the new golden standard of how cinema should look. This is the thing you need. Painfully bad. To create this effect, you need a lens like Helios 422 or Petzval lens, and it's impossible to recreate it in post. Until now. I shot some clips with this tiny lens. Sharp, clean and sterile, no swirl. Let's fix that. First, I'll show you a tool that I made myself. This tool creates a depth map of your image and uses it to create a blur effect. You can as well adjust the areas you want to stay in focus. You can adjust the strength of the bokeh and turn off the swirliness as well. And I am going to give this tool out for you for free in the end of the video. And then I'll show you a cool plugin called LensNode. This tool allows you to add swirly bokeh to a footage, and it allows you to emulate other visual characteristics of your favorite vintage lenses. This is so cool of a tool. So first let's take a look at the tool that I created that you will get for free. So here in DaVinci Resolve, I have some clips in shot in log, and I've already added an IDT node that takes our footage into a working color space. I'm using ACCT, but these actually work quite well in other log kind of profiles like DaVinci Intermediate or ARRI Log C. Just test it, it should work fine. Anyway, and then in the CC node, I do my color correction. And by the way, do you notice that my nodes are very tiny? And that's actually something I learned just actually today. If you unclick show thumbnails, you make them tiny and small and cool. So just a tip. Okay, so let's start to add a bit of, how would I say, similar kind of character to this, this image as we had in the reference. So this one. So first, let's add them into a group. Let's call it Swirly. I already have one Swirly 1, so I'm going to call them Swirly 2. And now there's this link icon on all of the clips. And whatever I do here in the group post clip will happen to all of the clips. And now I'm going to add an ODT, so Output Device Transform node. And I have one already set up here, Output Device Transform node. I'm just going to drag and drop it here. Now the clips are looking Rec 709, so normal. But we don't want normal, we want something cool. So I'm going to add a look, and this is a look modification transform, Vision 3250D version, and it gives us this look. And then I want to add, in the look library, I have this tool called Analog Artifacts. When I add it, nothing happens, but if I go inside it, I can add all kind of like analog artifacts to this look of mine. The breath adds a bit of flicker. Then I'll add scan dust. This adds small white dots, just like if you would have dust while you scan the photo of the frame. Then let's add chromatic aberration to have a bit of like something happening, this kind of red-blue fringe in the edge. Then let's add a frame. This adds this small textured frame to the edge of the image. And then I'm going to add film perfs that will add these perforations to the edge of the film as well. And gate weave actually will wiggle the frame just a bit, just like it would be in a projector. And I would say that our image lacks a bit of contrast, so I'm just going to add a bit of contrast. Okay, there we go. By the way, I want to show you a bit more about the AC Slide look library that I used in the clip just now. These are pre-made looks that give us a professional grade, often in just one click. I wanted to give people a shortcut on how to achieve the same quality looks as I'm able to create without spending a decade to learn how to color grade. You just drag and drop one of the looks from the library to the single path and the look is done. Or you can add another look just like this. And there are all over 11 looks to choose from, synthetic and real film emulation looks, and I'm adding more looks all the time. that you get right away when they are ready. These are much more than regular LUTs or DCTLs. These add physically accurate halation, physically accurate diffusion, realistic grain, and these work with the texture in your footage in a way you simply can't with a normal LUT. And everything in these looks are parametric. You can dive inside the look node and get access to all of the supplements, all made with native tools. You can easily adjust the size or strength of the halation effect, or turn off the diffusion nodes, change the type of film grain. You can add your own modifications or even mix and match looks together. When you get my ACES Lite look library, you get a clear and straight to the point tutorials on how to use these looks, and you'll learn this workflow easily. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and I'm actually replying to questions about the product, and I help people when they need help with their grading. To learn more about my look library and support me making these tutorials, check out the link in the description and in the end of the video. Now let's try the other Swirly Bokeh tool I told you about. Okay, so now we'll start with the fun part, and that is the creating the Swirly Bokeh, because here on our clip, there's no swirly bokehness. There's a bit of bokeh, it's not like totally sharp, and that's actually a good thing. I would recommend this effect works best if you have just a bit of bokeh, but not that much. Because, for example, here we have much more here we have much more bokeh. The bokeh balls are very large, and here this is the same situation, just the aperture cranked down smaller. And the thing is that when you have small aperture, so not so much bokeh, you get these highlight, like this small spots where are very bright, which dim down when you use your lens aperture high. So then the Swirly Bokeh works better when you have a bit of bokeh and not that much. Okay, but anyway, so let's add the bokeh. So the bokeh is here, and we'll just drag and drop it here. And a quick note, add this to individual clips, because we want to adjust it to individual clips separately, like how much is in focus, what part of the image is in focus, and so forth. So add this to individual clips, not to the group post clip where it would affect everything. Just the one clip, and that works much better. And now this is the fake bokeh, like a Swirly Bokeh here, and this is the real bokeh. And when we compare these together, like for example there, you can see how much sharper the real Swirly Bokeh is, and that is because, well, if we would have shot this like this in totally sharp, so no bokeh in the original image, we could get something similar to this. But even you look at this, this bokeh ball, it's almost like a I don't know, some kind of a blade of bokeh, not really a bokeh ball, it's like a blade of bokeh. That's unfortunately not possible with this tool, but you get something similar looking like this. And if the reason why I like to use it in an image that has not that much bokeh already is that if you add it to image that already has a lot of bokeh, there isn't that good information to start off with. So let's give it some time. There we go. Yes, the swirliness is there, but because there's already a layer of bokeh on top of the background, so the swirliness is not so good. Anyway, to just keep that in mind. Okay, and then let's look in what can you do with this tool. So as you can see, it's actually a compound node. So if you go inside it, you can see a bunch of nodes, and I've made it as intuitive as I could. The ones with the red X, just ignore them. Don't touch them, or you don't need to touch them, let's say that. Here's the depth node, and that is where you define kind of what is in focus and what is not in focus based on the depth in the image. So this is a tool in DaVinci Resolve that recreates the depth map. So black is the furthest, white is the closest, and I've simplified it so that white, white is in focus, black is blurry. So it's not really well, because in real you have the front bokeh and the back bokeh, but in this case it's just one bokeh. And here if you select this, and in the resulting map adjustment, you make sure, for example, I'll bring this down so that she is fully white, so then she is fully focus. And then if I bring it too much, you will start seeing the background starts to get in focus as well. You could play around with this and the gamma to get like your selection to be what you want. But anyway, I'm just gonna have it about there. And by the way, you can see the depth map by just bringing this signal here. And when you bring this back, then you can see the effect. Okay. And you can see here, for example, her hair is like sharp here, but then the background there is not sharp. Then the next node is this, sorry, mate, is this center focus. It's called center focus. And that is a power window. And by moving this power window around, you can like decide what is in focus and what is out of focus. Okay, that's how it works. And you can even change the shape and then the roll off and this kind of things. And then let's put it back up like this. And then before we go to the actual bokeh that creates this swirliness, then the refocus node is adding back the areas, because this swirly bokeh actually blurs everything slightly. So the refocus brings back the area from the center focus, it brings that back. If you don't like it, you can turn that off if for some reason, because you can see it here when I turn it on, turn it off. You can see it how it slightly softens the image. When I turn it back on, it brings the original sharpness back to the focused area. Okay, so then let's go inside the actual bokeh node, and it's a compound node again, so double click. And inside here, you can see a lot of these X nodes. Don't touch them, though. Well, you can, but don't worry, you don't need to touch them. And this is the node that creates the bokeh, or where you can adjust the bokeh. And in the blur strength, you can decide how much, like how big is the bokeh. So if you want just a bit, for example 4, or if you want to go overkill and go all the way to 8. I think something between 5 or 6 works for this kind of a close-up quite well. Then in the lens iris, you can change the type, for example, into a square, and then these move into something else, and maybe add a bit of blur curvature, and it starts to look kind of interesting like this. So you can play around with that. And with the anamorphism, you can decide how squished, like how it doesn't really affect the curviness, but it kind of the size. I often like to have it at 0.5, something like that. And with the highlights, you can boost the highlights to be like the highlights to work slightly higher, however you want. Okay, so this is how this works. And if you don't like the swirliness, that you would just like to have this tool, but without the swirliness, if you turn these and these nodes off, so let's turn, and not that one. So there we go. If you turn these and these nodes off, then you actually get rid of the swirliness. And let me show you how it's done. So if I turn this back on, you can see that, well, don't ignore that one. Let's turn that off for now. So this is how the effect is done. I'm kind of like doing this, what is it? Pin cushion? Whatever. This kind of a distortion to the image. And I'm adding the blur, and then I'm de-warping it back to its original state. And that's how you get the swirliness to the bokeh. And then, because that process softens the image a bit, then the refocus brings the center focus. This one, it brings that back in focus. So that, anyway, complicated explanation, but there you go. That's how the Swirly Bokeh works. And you can get this Swirly Bokeh tool that I made in the end of this video, and in the description there's a link where you can go and download it. While making research for this video, I found this crazy good plugin called LensNode. This tool allows us to add lens characteristics to your footage. And I had a call with the founders about the tool.
I'm Elliot, I'm a cinematographer, and I'm one of the creators of LensNode.
I'm Jared, and I also helped create LensNode, and my background's in visual effects and animation.
What is LensNode?
I was watching some TV shows. There's one called Sex Education, where they shot it on master primes and then made it look retro sort of in post and made it look vintage in post. And I remember reading about David Fincher making his, like, shooting spherical and then making some of his stuff look anamorphic in post. Yeah, we started experimenting, and LensNode now is a thing.
How are these profiles done?
So we take a reference camera with a very sharp lens, and we aim it at an OLED TV. There are some custom charts that we shoot, and then we shoot them with the same camera and the vintage lens that we're profiling. And we make the sharp reference lens match the vintage lens using this profiling version of the plugin, but it's months worth of playing around.
Jared's worst nightmare is that I find another lens that has another effect that we can't currently do, and he has to write another effect, or he has to change the code again, and then yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at this tool in DaVinci Resolve for real. So let's remove our bokeh swirly bokeh effect, and then I'm gonna add it's called LensNode effect, and let's add it to the signal path. And when you first add it, it looks kind of odd because there's quite a many settings that you need to get right. But first, let's make this work a bit smoother, just for the adjustment of this effect. So I'm going to turn off the color grade, and then in the playback, I'm going to bring my resolution to half, because with this tool and my tool, both, they have this downside that they're quite process heavy. So it's quite it takes a lot of processing power, so otherwise it's quite slow. So anyway, so let's go to the effects and let's start working with it. So first we need to get our color space correct, and I'm using ACCT, and you can see all of these other color spaces here as well that you can use as your working color space. So that's a good thing because it works with pretty much everything. And then here I can choose which lens characteristics I want to emulate. And out of these, I know that Helios, for example, has that iconic swirly bokeh, so I'm going to use that. And then it already starts to look a bit more like Helios. In this case, it has the vignette and the color cast and a bit of the distortion and things like this. But in this case, I'm going to bring everything down, distortion, comma. Well, the comma is beautiful. It's a beautiful effect. I want to make a whole video about that, and this tool makes it really nice. It makes it very well. Aberration down, fringe, and then bloom, vignette, and color cast. I'm going to bring all of them down. The only thing I want is the bokeh blur. And then I'm going to click extend range, so I can get actually more reach here. And I'm going to add like 5. You see a bit of the bokeh there on the edges. But to really get the swirliness going on with this tool, we first need to create a depth map so it knows what part of the image to add blur and where not to. So I just made this parallel node here, and I'm gonna add a depth map effect like this. And let's bring this actually to the output so we can see it there. And what is black is actually for this tool I need to do it the other way. So what is white, that has blur. What is black, it doesn't have blur. So here I'm gonna adjust this and make sure that our character stays in focus, but the background goes blurry. And now it's very sharp, the edges are very sharp. I don't recommend that. It creates these odd things on the edges. So in here in the map finance, I'm gonna add a bit of blur. Maybe that much is fine. You can play around to get the best results for your clip. Okay, and then I'm gonna adjust it to the second green input in this lens node, and let's bring it back here. So now in the effect control panel here, I'll go to the individual controls. Oh, we did that already. So then I'm gonna go to the creative settings, and here I'm gonna first add the swirliness. So let's bring it all the way. And then I'm gonna add the depth gain, so it's kind of like it takes the effect of this depth node there. And okay, now we are going a bit overboard with this. So actually, let's keep it like that. But I don't like how she's starting to be out of focus so much, and that we can fix with the f-stop sharpener. And this basically just emulates if you would put the aperture smaller in the lens, so then the effects get smaller and smaller. So I'm gonna bring this up to kind of get her back in focus. Not that much, something like that. And that starts to look, okay, it's overkill. I admit it's overkill. The bokeh is overkill, but anyway, it starts to look nice. Okay, and then we can bring the these two like these effects back on. And now if we compare our tool that I made with this LensNode. So one big difference between our free tool and this LensNode is in the bokeh balls. The bokeh in our free tool is actually more realistic. The sky peeking through the leaves, those bokeh balls should become much bigger and as they are in our clip. And while I was playing around with both of these tools, I figured out a hack on how you can force the LensNode to kind of use the same math as our free tool is using. And I told the developers, Elliot and Jared, about it, and they were quite excited about it. How about I share my screen? I'll show you the trick.
This is a really interesting thing to discover because I had a guess of how you'd done this, and it was different.
I'm going to leave this to you guys. You can now kind of play around. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying that I found this to be closer to what I want. And just after a few days of this interview I had with them, or this call I had with them, Jared sent me a message that he's already implementing this hack or his version, probably something more realistic, to the tool. So that's just caution showing how fast they are developing this tool, and they really want to make this tool as good as possible. But anyway, if they haven't implemented the new version already, I'm going to show you the hack in just in case, how you, well, so you can use it as well. So the hack in DaVinci Resolve is that before the LensNode effect, you add one more node, and let's call it color space transform. And in this node, you add color space transform node, and you turn your working color space, which is ACCT in my case, into linear. And that linear is a special kind of a color space because it looks horrible. But with this, the exposure values are now physically accurate. And then you add another node after the LensNode, and then just add another CCT node. By the way, if you just click and drag and press down Alt or Option and then just drag it here, and then here you swap it back. And now you can see like how much brighter if I select both of these nodes. There we go. You can see how much brighter the bokeh balls gets with this hack. The thing here is that because this is a hack, it's not how this is supposed to be done. You actually no longer can use your ACCT as your working color space. I recommend using Apple Log, and I don't know why, but that works better because if you use the ACCT, you will have weird artifacts all around the image. So just use the Apple Log as the working color space for the LensNode. And with this hack, you get these bokeh balls getting really bright and defined. And now they are actually way too bright. This is not realistic. If you want to dial that effect down, go to the first color space transform where we transform our input gamma into linear. And in DaVinci, in tone mapping, use custom max output. And then here, something between 100 and maybe 500. So let's try 300. That's how you can like affect how strong is this hack. And this only works with the bokeh blur effect. So if you want to use the other parts, other effects in this tool, I recommend making another node after this first one. And in here, you bring the bokeh blur down and then instead use all of your other tools that you want and put the input color space back to ACCT. And then you can have all your distortions and chroma and aberrations and vignette and color cast and all of these here. So that's how I would do it. So the bokeh I would do in this linear sandwich, this scene referred sandwich. So here we go into linear, and here we go out of linear back to our working color space. And then we do the bokeh here, but everything else we do outside of that sandwich. And of course now I just overkill it too much with everything. So let's get them back something like that. Okay, so that's how the hack works. And here are a few comparisons between our Swirly Bokeh tool and then the LensNode tool. And for comparison, I turned off all the other cool effects that you can do in the LensNode tool. I'm just concentrating on the Swirly Bokeh. And yeah, take a look. which one you like. The LensNode tool is evolving, and they have already teased of making a similar tool for anamorphic lenses. And I prefer supporting creators like Jared and Elliot, as I feel we are part of the same community. And they gave me a discount code for their tool. And when you buy their tool with my code, you will actually financially support me as well. So go and get their tool from the link in the description. And grab my Swirly Bokeh tool from this link as well. And subscribe, and see you in the next video.